I've had the ZF for about a year now, and I thought it's a good time to go through its second review on how what it's like to use in the long term when you're using it for professional work or travel or street photography with the different lenses and the different setups you can use. And I found several things, good and bad, about the ZF which I think could make or break if you want to buy this or not. A year ago I got the ZF as a bit of an emergency buy because my Z8, which I'm filming with now, went wrong for a long time and I had no return date. So I bought the ZF from Nikon refurbished for £1,700, which is the same price you could find it now really. And so I used it as my main camera for professional work and travel and street and everything else. And I really loved the ability of it. I've seen no difference in the autofocus ability for general use. The acquisition, auto eye for wildlife and for people is amazing, really is a much better experience than the older generation. So the biggest difference is the grip experience. So immediately I bought the small rig extension which goes on the bottom, and it's seamless, it looks beautiful, it looks good, it looks like it was part of the camera originally. And even with that, you can see I'm using, I call it the death grip, because you're clenching. I feel my forearm straight away. You might think, oh well, I'm a bit weak. No, well, I've got the 400 2.8 lens, and so everything feels feather-light compared to that. But if you compare it to the Z6 II, which I think is ergonomically for me the best experience of grip. It just feels so light. You get the idea that the size of the grip, and that makes a big difference over a long-term use. I've actually taken it off since I bought it. I can't remember what it's like. So, actually with this small lens, it actually feels okay. It's not bad, but again, my little finger would obviously, my two fingers go to the bottom because of my hands, but for these lenses it might be okay. But again, I do feel the tension holding it up in my forearm and wrist. My argument is that retro design is cool, it makes you feel good, but it's nostalgic. And nostalgia is glorifying the past. You know, oh, I wish it was like it used to be. You know, when cameras first came out, the film cameras, the manufacturers didn't really know the benefit of having a bigger grip. Maybe the lenses were smaller then, I'm not too sure. But evolution of design turns it into a bigger grip. So it's just better ergonomically for your hands. And so retro designs ignore all that. It's smaller and narrow and has this smaller grip, so it feels a lot more denser. I mean, the build is fantastic, it feels like indestructible, but it feels a lot heavier than the Z6 or the Z7. For long-term use and bigger lenses, I mean, I can put my 51.2, because the 51.2 is my main lens I use for events, and it's sensational, but look at the size of it. Even on my Z8 it feels uncomfortable after a while, but no way. No way. You know, with this lens you do have to use two hands anyway most of the time, but it just, oh no, it's impossible. I wouldn't use bigger lenses on it. But that's not what it's designed for, the ZF. It's designed for retro style little lenses like this, which it looks really good, feels nice. You go into a car arcade and you have those claws that try and get a prize, and it's like clinging onto it for dear life. And this is kind of what this feels like when you're holding it. I think the ZF is a perfect example of manufacturers trying to please everyone, and therefore you're not going to please everyone, and you might exclude or make a lot of people unhappy. So it's a retro design, but with so many modern features. I haven't even used a lot of them, to be fair. And I have to admit, these attractive dials on top, I've rarely used them for professional or hobbyist use. Most of the time I just shoot in aperture priority anyway. Although one of the problems with that is that the aperture control at the front is so embedded in it. It's actually really difficult to change, well, not really difficult, but fiddly to change the aperture. Of course, with retro film cameras, the aperture was on the lens. And then you have other things like the flippy screen. Now, I actually, because I'm filming this myself, and so I actually use the ZF usually to, reverse the screen, and I can see everything, it works straight away. I've been using SnapBridge with my Z8 and it's been a really big faff. It keeps on disconnecting, it wouldn't connect the first time. So having a reversible screen like this is amazing for filming yourself and vlogging and things like that. Although there is a way, Nikon. I've seen it with some manufacturers, because when I'm doing stills, the good thing about these style cameras is you can tilt them up and you can tilt them back. So when you're doing high photography or when you're low, it's just really quick and simple and it's done. So with these flippy screens, you can't do that. You have to send it out and then tilt it forward and back. And the other issue with a flippy screen is when you're using cables that go in here, that the cables get in the way of the screen. I'm not sure how you get around that, but it's just something to consider. And with the design, I've actually turned off some of these buttons that are around the grip because I'm gripping it quite tight and there isn't much room there. I've disabled the display button because I kept on hitting things. I've moved it to other positions. One of the other features I haven't really used is there's a black and white toggle. So you've got your camera mode and video mode and then black and white. Again, it's a nice feature that I have used a few times, but most of the time I don't. Because I sometimes just film through the viewfinder or when I'm looking back at the screen. And I've often gone to black and white instead of going to video, but obviously you just turn it around. But again, it adds an extra seconds or adjustments that you don't really want to think about. And I think this is another one of those things where Nikon want to try to please everybody, make it retro design and put all these black and white and retro features in. It's a bit, as Lars has said in the initial review, it's all a bit fussy and all a bit clustered. Because I used this and my Z8 in tandem with events, and I find the EVF on the ZF quite a bit lower quality than my Z8. With my Z8, I feel like I forget that it's electronic display. I know on the Z6 III it's even better than all of them, and that would be really good benefit. I find the metering is quite a bit different, and it might be some of the deeper menu options I've messed around with or just not work, I need to adjust. But so I often have to use the exposure compensation dial here, which is nice, but I always have it on +1 or -1 or even more than that sometimes. When the scene has like highlights in or dark shadows in, I seem to need to adjust it more than my other cameras. And it probably is an adjustment in the sub-menus for that, but I'm not sure. Everything seems to be on default, and I've got the metering mode on center weighted. And another strange feature of the ZF is that it has, well, one of the good things about it has the IBIS, which is fantastic, amazing image body stabilization, but you can't turn it off. Moving it around in your bag, the image stabilization is always loose, and so I worry that any heavy jolt in the backpack or traveling in a car, it might just knock it off. But I suppose I've had this for a year and I've had no problems with that. But it maybe would be better if there was a lock feature. When the camera was off, it would fix it in position. It is a bit strange having a mechanical shutter. When you get used to the Z8 as your main camera, of course it's fully stacked sensor, fully electronic, and you just have those little things at the side. Whereas this is, you have a nice clunky sound, which is nice to hear sometimes. It's just a bit jarring, and of course you have the blackout with this as well. Every time you take a frame, there's a blackout. Comparing this to the Z6 III, which is out now, and well, the price is, well, almost £1,000 difference. I got this for £1,700. The Z6 III is 2,600, maybe 2,700. Although interestingly, Nikon Refurbished had a Z6 III on the refurbished list. And that changes everything, because if the Z6 III is close to that price, close to the ZF price, then sensibly I would go for the Z6 III because of the ergonomics of the grip and a few more professional features in there. But I'm fully happy with the ability of this camera. There's nothing like I think, oh, I wish it had this or I wish it had that. And I use it in tandem with my Z8 and they feel both great for what I do. And I took the 40F2 to London and we were there for 2 days, and to be honest, even with the smaller grip attached, I did get fed up of just that clench grip of death on my forearm. It was just got a bit comfortable, and I did start using the neck strap and had it round like this, and I was kind of just going around shooting from the hip anyway. I love the look of the ZF. I'll take this off again. It really is cool. You get loads of compliments and people think it's a film camera. When you're going around street photography or travel, you're not going to get noticed. If I took even my Z6, if it looks, it looks expensive and modern, it kind of gets more eye attention, which I don't want. Because before the ZF, I had the ZF-C, which was almost half the weight of this camera. And that was to its benefit. I know the build was a bit like a toy, but for street and travel, it was so light. And it had a great system, apart from it being a DX image sensor. So how do you guys feel about the ZF? I mean, have you guys had it for a long time like I have and found other things which are more interesting about it as well, or difficult about it? For those deciding between the ZF, Z6 III or Z8, or maybe the Z6 and Z7, it really does depend on what you want out of a camera, how you want to feel about using it. I love picking this up and using it, despite its dense weight and a bit fiddly here and there. How you want a relationship with your camera, and that's important. I mean, would you prefer to use something like the Z6 and take it out? Does it feel a bit electronic and modern? Some people might like that. Or a bit more nostalgic and have a rapport with this nostalgic feeling you can get from using a retro design camera. See you next time.